So welcome. Thank you guys for joining us here in the audience and online. We're happy to have Ellie Sauls here today to talk about financial literacy for women. For those of you watching online, please post your questions in the chat and I will relay them to Ellie when we get to the Q&A session. So let me introduce Ellie Sauls. For the past decade, she has been teaching Medicare classes and helping financial advisors with health protection analysis for their clients. She is passionate about providing educational resources for all her students without promoting a specific company or product in any classes or educational materials. Knowledgeable and enthusiastic, Ellie teaches with simple illustrations and relevant stories to make learning fun. So welcome. I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you. Welcome everybody. I'm so happy to have many of you joining us online and our sweet crowd right here at the Fort Worth Public Library, which, by the way, thank you, City of Fort Worth Public Library, for inviting me to come back and teach again. I love your program, and I'm honored and super thankful to be a part of the Fort Worth community. I do care a lot about literacy, especially as fascinating as it may sound to you, Medicare literacy and financial literacy for women. So I teach several different classes, including ABCs of Medicare, Medicare, Social Security, and you, and my favorite, most fun, I don't know, least productive or profitable one, women, money, power, because this is a passion of mine as well. And I think you'll hear some of why it's so important to me when you hear part of my story. So welcome to the Financial Literacy for Women class. Here's just a little disclaimer. Because of the professional designations and licenses that I hold, I have to say there's nothing that I'm going to share with you today that is advice. There's no way to give anyone financial, tax, legal, even health advice unless you meet with someone one-on-one with a professional. There's no one-size-fits-all. Also, I don't work for the library, so you're also saying you're not going to hold the library liable if you hear me teach something that's just general and think that I meant you should put something into action that, you know, messed you up or something. Okay, so we're just all in here learning together and having a good time. Oh, that's me, Ellie Sauls. I am the CEO and Mama Bear of a little company called Mama Bear Resources, LLC. We protect your retirement, so we do education and consultations for Medicare, retirement, Social Security optimization, and of course, my favorite is educating the public. I love teaching, and that little barcode goes to all my social media contacts. If you are getting close to Medicare, you'll really love my social media because there's a lot of Medicare information. So, if I need to keep going or not, probably not, right? Wait just a second. Yeah, well, I'll tell you more about me. I know all about me. So one of the reasons it's so important to talk about finance and to get together as women, specifically to discuss how things matter to us, is because when we don't all grow up learning about finance the same way, or maybe like me, not learning about it at all, except the school of hard knocks, growing up poor, and if I wanted it, I was going to make money, right? And if I made it, I pretty much spent it, because who cares? I have a superpower. It's called work. If I spend it all, I can make more, and the more I make, the more I can borrow. And the more I can borrow, the more I can have, right? And you get into kind of this cycle if you've never had any literacy exposure to just basic financial concepts. Hard to do that. I'm like, when I first got married, my husband used to have this practice where he would invite friends over and I would get home from work and they'd be there and I would be a sheer panic if they were there and I didn't know they were coming. I don't know why. You just made me think. Like, you can have people in my house and you not know about it. If I knew they were coming, even 1 minute before I walked in the door, I didn't care. I need to know where I'm going, right? So just so you know where you're going today, we do have a little agenda. That's Rachel, she's holding it. We made our PowerPoint, she was a free graphic. So she's gonna be with us a lot today. We're gonna do 3 things. We're gonna talk about where you should begin or where you do begin. Number 2, the M word, spoiler alert, it's money. And number 3, planning to always have enough. Are y'all excited? Okay, let's talk about women in finance over the years. You see my little graph there? It looks a little bit fuzzy, but let's just say we're going with artistic expression of the buzz because some of these numbers are going to surprise you. In 1920, we got the right to vote as women in America. Woohoo! In 1960, 40 years later, it became legal for a woman to own a bank account. 1960? Doesn't it feel like that's a little bit too soon? Like too close to where we are today? That's when it became legal for us to own our own money, to have money. 1974, it became legal for us to be listed on a mortgage and for anyone who was on the mortgage with us to have our permission to sell or get a second mortgage on that loan. Isn't that bananas? 74. 78, of course, we got credit cards, access, and it became illegal to deny us solely on purpose on the basis of being a woman. And it only became a crime to fire a woman for being pregnant in 1980. Isn't that crazy? So when we think about equality in finance, we're really not smoke and mirrors, right? We're not talking about a concept that's unique to experience here and to data. We have all this information. We know our history. We know where we've come from, and we've come a long way. But that is a very short time span from where we are today. So no matter how far we come, we got a long way to go. Because when we look at where we are today, women still get paid 82 cents on the dollar of what a man gets paid. And I'm not a man hater. I have a husband and a son, so I adore them, okay? But these are just numbers, okay? They're just facts. And I've always loved numbers. I have 2 mathematician grandparents, so figure that. In fact, 8 is my favorite number because if you flip it on its side, it's infinity, so it's all numbers. You don't even have to pick one. So numbers are awesome, and math is great because it doesn't lie, right? We just know the facts. When you look at the wage discrepancy or disparity between women and men, there are some arguments that from job to job, it's closer to 99%. But we're not just talking about job to job, right? We're not all going to have the same position. We're not all going to have the same career. And thankfully, there is a minimum wage law that has been established, and that was established largely due to women entering the workforce because they were being discriminated against. And that's crazy because a lot of times women wear different hats in the household, right? Some industries, like the industry of finance, it's 60 cents to the dollar. We got a little ways to go, right? So where do we begin? We can all start in the same place, no matter where we are or what we've done or what we've had coming to us. And to me, in this class, we'll talk about understanding how we view finance, going beyond some of those invisible chains that we may not even realize we're still bound to, and then embracing logical and emotional finance. You can see Rachel, she's over there thinking, like, why does it matter? How do you view finance? Well, financial well-being right? I think we all agree. How do you always have enough money? Well, you make more than what you spend. Or put another way, you spend less than what you make. We all know how it works, right? We all know how the principle of having enough can be accomplished, but until we know how we look at finance, we may not even know where to begin. So, that is what we're talking about today. And for starters, in a girl class, we gotta have a personality quiz. So that is where we're gonna begin. On your handout, the second page actually says, we'll start on page 2 because we're advanced. The second page says personality quiz answers. So you'll just put your answers in the little number. You can number it, I mean, it's 1 through 8, that's how many there are. And basically, you're gonna score these statements. Okay, you saw on the last slide, it's have fun, okay? There's no winners or losers here. It's just for us to get a better idea of how we look at money so that we can know how to learn and how to apply principles that we may or may not know yet, but certainly have access in this fine library, among other places, to find. So you're going to put a 5 if you hear me say a phrase and you're like, yeah, that's totally, I strongly agree. A 4 if you agree, a 3 if you either agree or don't agree, or it's just, it doesn't really apply to you. A 2 if you disagree, or a 1 if you're like, not even close. All right? First one, I feel confident when it comes to managing money and investing. Just give yourself a little score there. Number 2, don't take too long and don't overthink it. This should be fun. I feel I have adequately planned, or I am adequately planning for retirement. Number 3, I feel I am educated when it comes to managing money and investing. Number 4, I am very involved in the management of my long-term savings and investments. Number 5, I feel I am clear about my financial goals and plans. Number 6, I am either actively paying off debts or debt-free. Number 7, it is very important for me that I always have a complete understanding of my household financial situation. No right or wrong answer, just pick a number. And last one, when I'm in a relationship, I like to talk with my partner about financial decisions. Yay, you did great. Did anybody answer all of them? Yeah, okay. If you've answered them, you passed. Now, what I want you to do is count up your numbers that you put down for each answer. Add them all together. If you need a calculator or need your toes, you can take your time. You're at home, I don't even know. Let's talk about some of these results. Again, I don't want anyone to think, oh man, that's me, and what a bummer, or gosh, I'm just so good at this, I don't need to hear from anybody. What I want us and what I hope that we can achieve from just taking this little personality quiz is to know how we view financial situations or how we view finances. So if you got between 14 and 19 points, your personality and how you view finance is a financial avoider. I think on any given day, we might all have different personalities here because there are some things that I want to avoid. For example, my husband called me today because on Saturday we do tax and time and make sure all of my income is 1099 or well, goes into a business. But anyway, so it's all not taxed yet. So we have to plan ahead for the taxes. And we do that on Saturday. So I got a phone call and he said, hey, why are they taking blah, blah, blah for blah, blah, blah? And I'm like, I will check on it, right? So ideally, I would love to just like avoid that and it not matter, but thankfully I'm not alone, right? But a financial avoider just kind of has the attitude of, it's all gonna work out, I just don't, I'm too scared, I don't wanna talk about it, it's too much, it's not my thing, right? Whether it's your thing or not, you need to be financially independent as a woman in America. You're gonna live longer than men. Statistically, you're gonna make less and save less. So let's get that, let's get it together. Okay, 20 to 26 points. You are considered a financial collaborator. In the example of husband calling, I guess that's both. I would rather avoid the call. No, I'm kidding. Or, right, collaborate. He was like, no, we need to talk about this. I just want to make sure they're not taking too much. If you want to know, it's for my trademark. I have a little trademark on my logo on my brand. Like someone's going to take all their resources on me. Oh, me. But anyway, so a collaborator likes to talk it out. If someone's a collaborator, that tells you that if you're trying to do finance alone, it's probably not going to be as good as it can be. And you don't have to have a partner to have someone to collaborate with. Okay, 8 points to 13 points. Financial dreamer. I'm dreaming of paychecks. So we've all been there too, right, from time to time. And I would say that probably 18 to 25, I was absolutely a financial dreamer. I just started like making pretty good money when I was about 23, my first real job. And at 24, I was making about $84,000 a year. And I thought, man, this is it, I'll arrive, right? Like I am doing it. I'm boss babe. Boss babe wasn't out yet. We were on MySpace. But I was just dreaming. Because I wasn't organized, I wasn't structured, I didn't have a plan. Every penny that I got, I spent because I thought that's what you do, right? I made it, I'm gonna spend it. So some of us dreamers who feel like, well, I'll make plenty, and if I run out, I'll make more. So there, don't plan for a rainy day. Or when we have a reality check with somebody, back to the phone call with husband, that could have been a dream too. Like, oh, it doesn't matter what they take. I mean, it's fine. What do you care? What do you know about my brand? If someone brings something to your attention, if you're a dreamer, it can feel like an attack, right? Like, why are you waiting with me? I'm doing fine. I'm not doing anything wrong, right? So it kind of helps open our eyes to be a little bit more welcoming to someone else maybe having an answer that we don't because they're away, right? All right, here's sweet girl just like initiating. She's just looking at the future like, I got it. So 35 to 40 points is a financial initiator. And I'm telling you, these aren't good or bad. If my husband and I took this, we would both be initiators predominantly, and we would both probably butt heads on many things, but we're going to communicate, we're going to talk it through. And since we both know that we're both alphas trying to come into the conversation about finances, we realize that there's not going to be give, right, on the other side if you don't at least have your heart open to give as well. Because we don't all know everything, right? Thankfully, we don't have to. We're talking about all the IT that goes into this one little class, y'all, and it is just amazing how talented people are. Okay, 27 to 34, financial analyzer. This means you think about things, and you think about things, and you think about things. And sometimes all of us get like this, perhaps, about certain decisions. But on the analyzer side, sometimes what keeps an analyzer from going for it is FOMO. That's a new thing. FOMO, well, it may not be that new, but fear of missing out or just not knowing what the exact right decision would be. So if there's an excuse to not move forward for an analyzer, it could be, there's too much information. I just have to keep thinking about it, right? I'm thinking about how my plan should look. Well, nobody's really gonna just take time to sit and think unless they're doing like yoga or meditation, right? But sometimes it's like a safety that's false built into our minds, like if I just keep researching, if I keep looking at more information, then maybe I'll find something that'll make me move forward instead of taking a deep breath, looking at where you are, and doing the best you can with what you have where you are. Because at the end of the day, most financial decisions, we're not going to know if we made the right call until we pass. Right? We're not going to know if we started Social Security at the right time. We're not going to know if we started putting away our 401k at the right time until it's time to retire. And then we're like, oh no, I didn't do it right, or I put it in the wrong thing, or whatever. So we can't wait for or analyze until we get to that place where we're forced to make a decision. So sometimes analyzers also need a little nudge. You may or may not have got onto this. But no matter what your personality is, doesn't it kind of sound to you like none of us were meant to do it alone? How can we? If we've only been allowed to own a dollar since 1960, legally. Isn't that crazy? We gotta help each other, all right? Look at that little elephant. Okay, on that little elephant, ooh, I'm not gonna, yeah, you see it? The chain. Okay, why is that chain there? I have a friend whose dad lives in Thailand, so she visits there some, and this is a true story, but they train baby elephants to grow up into big elephants that like carry people around. You've seen pictures of all the different things that the elephants do, but what's so remarkable is that when they're babies, they have, and I mean a baby elephant's still pretty big, right? They have chains or even just ropes that are tied around the bottom of their big feet and to a stake to give them a radius of how far they can go. And after so many years, they take the rope off and they take the chain off. But even when they take the chain and the rope off, the adult elephant stays in that little perimeter, usually for their whole life. They live like the rope is still there, even when it's not. And I share that because it doesn't matter how we were raised, right? It doesn't matter if you had the opportunity to go to college for free, or if you have parents who taught you about finances, or if you just don't know. If you have no idea and you're just trying to make it, right? None of that matters in the sense that there are things that every single one of us can do right now to always have enough, okay? And even if it feels, especially as a woman sometimes, like it seems a little bit unfair, like I'm gonna have to work a little bit harder if I'm only making 60 cents on the dollar in the field of finance. So how can I get over that? How can I beat that? If I just stay at like the 60% line and I think, well, I've arrived, that's as good as any girl's gonna get, then I'm just done, right? Whether it's really attached or not. But if I get up early and go late and work really hard to make those numbers go up, there's nothing saying that I can't. There's also nothing saying that we're ever too young or too old to learn about finance and make an impact. So today, if you have any preconceived notions of wealth or preconceived notions of being comfortable financially or managing your money well, and sometimes it's as simple as thinking, oh, like I was with that big $84,000. I mean, I had arrived. You would have thought that I had $1 million in the bank or something, because from what I was used to and what I saw, I just assumed that at like 100,000, that's as rich as you're ever going to be, right? But I also had in the back of my mind, without even realizing it, that there's no way anybody could ever buy a car cash. You're always going to have a car payment. You're always going to have rent. You're always going to have a mortgage. I'm trying to think now. Well, it's been a while since we've had either of those, thankfully, very thankfully. But it wasn't always that way, right? You got to get there. And you can make $40,000 versus $80,000 and have more and be more secure than the person making more if they're just on the wrong path. So for me, I had to remove some things that were like tiny back. And I feel like that little cap that I gave myself, like, oh, that's the richest anybody can ever be. And then, yet I still thought some things were totally unattainable because somewhere in the back of my mind, I associated being wealthy with being bad. Like somewhere in the back of my mind, I thought, well, yeah, even if I had more money, I would never, oh no, I don't need that much money. I wouldn't know what to do with that. I just, I had this mentality like it made me less of a good person. Like you weren't as moral if you weren't poor and scraping by. And I don't really know where that came from. I don't know if it came from, well, I just don't know where it came from. But I no longer have that, and it took a while. So that could be one thing. Another thing could be, well, I've never been good at math, so I'm not going to be able to do money. I'm just not going to. Or to think that finance is like an avoider, like, oh, it's too scary. Like, I'm terrified. I don't even want to look at it because I'm just scared, right? There's a lot of fear that holds us back too. And the good news about finance is that most of the time, the fear that I find in the women that I talk to and counsel and advise is the fear of what the words mean, right? And it's almost like you don't want to tell anybody. Just because you don't understand what something does or what it means doesn't mean it's bad, and it doesn't mean that you don't have access to it. Because we have so much information at the tips of our fingers, or you can come into the library and use a computer or take out a book. I have a friend who, when she was really, really little, she was afraid of the dark. And so she came to her dad and she told him that she didn't want to go into the den of their house by herself because she was afraid of the dark. And he said, well, honey, you don't have to worry about that. It's daylight out there. I don't know how young she had to have been, but she never heard the term daylight. So in her mind, she started making up this idea about a daylight monster that was surely going to get her if she went into that den. And now, of course, she can laugh about it because daylight, what she was so afraid of, was exactly what she needed to not be afraid. So, get rid of the chains, or know that the chain is already gone. Wasn't that fun? Okay, now let's talk about right brain, left brain. There's different schools of thought about finance and different types of finance. But they can usually be divided into two main categories, just like our brain, right? There's the logical and there's the emotional. And some would say, well, logical is better than emotional. And some would say, emotional is better than logical. You know, get it, emotional. Yeah. But the truth is, whether finance is logical or emotional does not make it less or more valid, as long as it is responsible, right? So responsible finance can be logical or emotional. Let me give you some examples. So logical finance is all the numbers, like all the numbers need to work out at the end of the day. So logical finance in the data that we have for how long we're going to live before we pass, we're going to live longer than anyone ever has. Okay. There's a scientist alive right now who studies longevity, and his name is Young, which is, it's his destiny, right? He believes there's enough data to prove that we're going to see 150. There are people alive right now who will live to 150 years old. Isn't that crazy? So we're going to live a long time, right? Logical finance, not even going to the 150, but just going to the, numbers where they say we are now, which are a little bit skewed because of the last 2 years, but neither here nor there. As long as we're going to live, logically, if you just look at the numbers, you're a computer, you don't see people, every person should wait until they're 70 to draw their Social Security because they're going to live long enough for the difference to be worth it. And they're going to need the difference, right? If we're just logical. Well, if you've ever met one person who passed on a different day than someone else that you've met, you know that we can't just go by the numbers because we're human, right? And we all have different life experiences. And in the case of Social Security, literally, we will not know until we pass if we pick the right day. Because it's just a set amount of money for a set amount forever, right? So we don't know the time frame. And it's based on actuarial data. So logical finance would say that, right? Emotional finance would say, well, I've worked since I was 12 and I'm exhausted and I have enough quarters and I think I can live on what I'm drawing at 62. I'm going to draw. I'm going to draw because I really want to and I don't want to miss out on it and I'm not going to keep making more so I won't be going against the earnings test. And let's just say the emotional person passes before they turn 70 or whatever the case may be. Neither of those choices are good or bad, right? As long as they are responsible. Another example, logical finance says, don't pay your house off. You should have a mortgage because the dollars that you save, right, by not giving them a lump sum, those dollars, you can use them to invest. And you can make more money off of investments than you could just cold hard cash or a house, right? Like it makes more sense logically to possibly have a mortgage versus paying it off. Emotional finance says, I didn't have enough growing up. I grew up poor. I wear my shoes till they wear it through. My husband has thrown away in the middle of the night. I'm going to hustle because I'm going to always have enough and I'm going to have room for my baby, right? So neither one of those options would be wrong as long as they're responsible. There comes a time when either one could end up being irresponsible. For example, in logical finance, it would be irresponsible for someone, especially a teacher or an advisor, to say, everybody needs to wait until this day to draw, right? That's irresponsible. Even if it's logical, it's not going to be the right answer for everyone. And as difficult as that is, that means we have to meet people one-on-one because every person matters and every person is completely different than the next. Irresponsible emotional finance might be, let's see, but I really, really, really love that purse and I don't really have enough money to buy it. I don't really have a steady job, but I'm just going to put on the credit card because I love it, right? That's emotional finance that maybe is not so good. Ooh, I got a good one for emotional. Borrowing, lending money to individuals that you love, that you have a history of not repaying you, right? If you have the means to gift finances and you have the ability to love despite whether or not it comes back to you, then it's not irresponsible, right? You can give whatever you want to. You can do what you want if you have enough. But if you don't have enough, if you're trying to make your bills and you lending someone money because you love them is going to mean that your kid's going to be hungry, that's irresponsible. Emotional finance. How do y'all feel about that? Pretty fun, huh? And that was number one. We're almost halfway to the sweet finish line of today. No, I'm kidding. Okay, the M word. You see Rachel, she's like, I'm not saying it. Did you know that a survey taken recently stated that women are more likely to want to talk about their own funeral than their finances? And that's not just women. There is like a weird stigma about talking about money. And sometimes like it's weird because you can have friends and then you say something about money and it's like it changes us because it is such a complex, big part of our lives, right? It's the currency, it's the values. That's not the word tunnel, but it's a big deal. And there can be a lot of fear just even bringing it up or talking to someone. And sometimes, even if we're not really necessarily afraid of talking about it, and it doesn't hurt our feelings when someone has a lot of money, or when someone doesn't have much money, or when someone's happy just being wherever they are and they don't want to do anything, right? So there's not, but we don't want to talk about it because we don't know enough, right? We're afraid. So thankfully, in this day and age, we have evolved to be at the place where you don't have to know everything to start talking about something. We were able to vote for 40 years before we got a bank account. I mean, you think we put that on the ballot a little sooner? No. But you know what I mean? Like, we are always learning. So we have to consider just breaking away from that stigma and that preconceived hesitation or feeling to talk about money. It's not taboo. We all have it. We all spend it. So I want everybody on the count of three to say it. On the count of three, we're going to say money. Are you ready? Are you ready? 1, 2, 3.
Money.
Nothing happened. Nobody got hurt. Okay, now we're going to say, you're just going to repeat after me. And if you're at home, it's the honor code, all right? Like, we really want you to do it because something happens when we say out loud what we have permission to do. So I have permission to say money.
I have permission to say money.
Thank you. I have permission to learn about money.
I have permission to learn about money.
I have permission to make lots of money.
I have permission to make lots of money.
I have permission to save lots of money.
I have permission to save lots of money.
I have permission to be honest about where I am now financially.
I have permission to be honest about where I am now financially.
Y'all are doing great. Last one. I have permission to be kind to myself on this journey.
I have permission to be kind to myself on this journey.
Never underestimate the power and influence of the mean girl. Y'all know what I'm talking about? If you're a girl, you know there's always a mean girl. And sometimes the meanest girl is you. You're the meanest girl to yourself. A lot of times, I know I am. I'm more critical of myself than anybody. Like I would think, I don't know, if anybody has a child, like when you have a child. When I had my son, which took us a while, so we were a little bit older, but when I see other moms, I'm like in awe of how awesome they're doing, right? And when I see myself, I'm like, I really hope he's still alive 5 minutes from now because I don't know if I'm doing a good enough job. Like, did I get this right? Did I get that right? So sometimes our own perception of ourselves is what keeps us from moving forward. When it's super easy saying, I have permission to be kind to myself and just putting it out there. All right, the M word, money. Financial literacy is defined as being confident in one's understanding of money and the value of it, okay? So when I say you understand money and you understand the value, because different dollars are worth different amounts, and different dollars should be spent in different ways at different times. What I'm talking about, you having a grip or a grasp of is what do you have, where is it, and what do you spend? Okay. Here's another form of finance, and this, like some advisors, or there are some theories that base their entire system of how to advise others to invest on this theory. That behavioral finance is how we respond to money or events or perceived events. So what we do with our money because something crazy happens over here. Like, have you ever heard the term buy low, sell high? Behavioral finance is the opposite, because when things start going down, you start panicking and you're like, I'm gonna sell right now. There are advisors who are like, all right, when people start panicking like that, that's the opposite of what behavior does. So sometimes we have to teach ourselves, right? We have to rethink things and reread and relearn certain behaviors. Because instead of just responding to events or even perceived events, like some things might not even really be happening. Well, I think it's going to do this, or I think it's going to do that, so I'm doing this. Instead of that, what if we knew a little bit more about the actual money and use it in the way that it behaves to serve us instead of the other way around, right? Like just reacting or responding. So on your paper, you should have one little sheet like this that has a pretty little circle on it. That circles it. Does anybody need a pen? We're going to take notes. It's coming. All right. So I'll just say it again for the sake of all our souls. This is not advice. I'm not giving you any financial advice. I'm not giving any tax advice. I'm not promoting or recommending anything. Personally, I believe you have to have a one-on-one with every single person before you can do that. So I'm just giving you a general, I think you guys have this overview. She has all of it. Of money, okay? So we're going to talk about how money behaves. What does that mean? What does money do? And we're going to make it super duper simple. And please don't think that this is condescending, because I draw this picture for every single client, whether they're a multi-million-dollar accounting expert or a widow who recently lost her husband, right? Okay, so I do this for my sake as well, because I'm a visual learner. So I want you to take your pen and that circle, divide it into 4 parts, all right? The 4 behaviors that money has are not necessarily intended to be equal parts, right? Like you don't have to have equal parts of every different type of behavior that money has. But I just want you to understand that there are 4 distinct, they're different from one another, ways that money can act. Because this can empower you to spend the right dollar at the right time. So first I want you to draw water. You can make it easy water, like this little waves like that. Okay, I want you to draw water because one behavior of money is being liquid. Being liquid means you can spend it right now. Okay, being liquid in this category means you can write a check or you can get some money out or whatever the case may be, however you access it, it's easy, okay? It's under the mattress. Money in this category is money that is used to be spent, okay? This is where we find money for things like gas in our car, or things like a light bill, or a mortgage, or whatever costs we have incurring repeatedly. This is also where we find an emergency fund, right? Where we have some funds stacked away. The general perceived value that's sufficient here in financial text would be about 6 to 9 months of income or expenses, depending on how you feel most prepared for life and everything that comes. Some textbooks say before you retire, you should have 12 months of income. Say, just in case. Some say 24. Okay, and that's not to make anybody feel bad about where you are. It's just to give you an idea of what economists or financial ideas may recommend. I think it depends on you, right? A lot of times when it just comes down to how can you be responsible. So I have clients who have 24 months, right? And I think some of this is based on income too. So I have clients with income that's a little bit lower. And when they retire, they've got 12 to 24 months and it's tucked away and it's liquid so they can write a check on it, but they don't keep that debit card in their wallet. You know what I mean? It's liquid in the sense that I've got an emergency fund, but it's out of mine. It's in a different place where I'm not gonna, use it if I overdraft or anything like that. And it depends on where you are responsibly, what you want to do there. But overall, you want to have some liquid, of course, and that's not a recommendation either. It's just one way that money can act. Number 2, I want you to draw a cloud. That's not a cloud. I don't know why it's yellow. I guess the sun, the daylight. Scary daylight monsters, they get yellow. So I draw a cloud because money can be safe. Safe money or protected money is when your principal is protected wherever it is, and your interest is protected wherever it is. Because we have to remember, in addition to different behaviors that money can have, there are different locations where money can be housed called custodians. So in different houses, there are different guarantees, right? Like maybe you've heard of the bank, an FDIC guarantee of up to $250,000. That would be one example. There's an equivalent in the credit union world with a different acronym, and there's sort of an insurance equivalent as well. It just protects a little bit differently. So the easiest example would be a CD at the bank. Most of us have heard at least of a CD. They used to be a really big deal, okay, back in the day, because they used to have really good rates. Now, I heard what Dave Ramsey say, their certificates of depression because they don't make a lot of interest. But you're not trying to get rich overnight here, okay? This is where money goes that someone wants to protect. So the only statements you ever get on the safe money goes up, never goes down, okay? So you could look at CDs. There are fixed deferred annuities, which annuity, some people think it's a cuss word because sometimes it's misused in portfolios, and I've seen it, and I certainly understand that. But it's just a word, so don't be afraid of it, right? It's a daylight monster. Annuity just means a financial product that's managed by an insurance company. Like you can insure your home, you can insure your car, you can insure your health, you can insure your wealth. Okay, so there are several insurance products or insurance vehicles in the safe money side that can do this just like a CD. Some of them have different features, some of them pay more, some of them pay less. One little acronym I want you to notice there is the MYGA, M-Y-G-A. That stands for multi-year guaranteed annuity. It's basically the same thing as a CD. It's the same exact interest, however long you have it for, however long that interest is good for. And it's just managed in a different way. So I'm trying to make a distinction, but not scare anyone with the new information. LTC is my little acronym for long-term care. There are long-term care plans that have hybrid life insurance cash value in them. So that could be one example. I'm not saying all of them do, they don't, they all work differently, but there are some that have cash value. Some life insurance policies have cash value, and some have guaranteed interest rates. So again, you're not getting rich overnight, slow growth, but the purpose is really to protect. If there's something someone wants to protect, or I've heard of people using this to ladder when they start using different dollars. So in other words, have one that comes to term in 2 years, and then one that comes in 3, and one that comes in 4, so that you can kind of ladder out how to spend them. Number 3, I want you to draw fire. If you don't know how to draw fire, just look at that little drawing. I just make a big X like this when I draw it, and then swoop up the little, flames up in the air, because number 3 represents risk. Risk means there's no guarantees. So your interest is not guaranteed and your principal is not guaranteed. And there's a place for this, certainly, because this is where we can see a lot of growth. It's called risk though, because there's no guarantees. So it can go up, it can go to the moon, right? You can buy the right crypto at the right time, not a recommendation. But, and I'm not recommending that you don't. There's no recommending going on. But if you get the right thing at the right time, it could be like winning the lottery. I mean, you could get really wealthy really fast, but you could also lose everything you put in. The beauty to me of the risk is when it comes to stocks, for example, when you buy a stock, you can buy a part of the American dream. It's like you're buying a part of someone else's dream. You're participating in the process of them being a successful business and becoming more successful. And so that means because you've got stock in it, when they do good, you're going to do good. And when they don't do good, you're going to lose money. Okay, so it's kind of like participating in that part of the American dream without having to, be an entrepreneur out there on your own, trying to have a Mama Bear Resources LLC. I'm just kidding, but no guarantees. So no guarantee would include stocks, bonds, mutual funds, variable annuities. There's that word again. Variable annuity is basically the same thing as a mutual fund with lots of fees added to it that's managed by an insurance company instead of a brokerage account. This could be real estate, commodities, coin, cattle, oil, anytime that you could have a value that goes up or down, right? And that's unpredictable. Like there's no guarantees here whatsoever. There is this concept that is taught called the rule of 100s. The rule of 100 says you should take 100, you should minus your age. So for me, I would write a little equation, 100 minus 40. I'll take 100 minus my age, and that 60, that bottom number, it's actually 39, but I'm 40. So that number on the bottom that you end up with, they say that's the amount that you should have at risk at any given time. I think y'all probably have gathered just a little bit that I don't think there's one answer for everyone. And I think that would be a little bit more on the logical side, in that, oh, I'm a robot, just take 100 minus your number, that's exactly what you should have here. It just doesn't work like that. I think that instead of asking what's 100 minus your age, and by the way, I have read 2 books recently, and like in the past year, that suggest adding 10 to it. So instead of the rule of 100, thinking this is how long I'm going to live, so I should expose myself to more or less risk, economists, the economic community, published economists are saying, hey, add 10 to it. So that 150 is not looking so strange, is it? Very interesting. What all of that tells me is not, here's a formula of what you should do for your bank account or your stocks or your bonds or your mix of. It's saying you're going to live longer than you would have perhaps statistically. So think about that. you're doing this. And a better question than what's 100 minus your age is, what can you afford? What can you afford to lose, right? And what can you stomach losing? Because there's this guy that talks about financial peace. He's like, financial peace is the prince of peace. I said it earlier and I can't think of his name. But anyway, I think financial peace comes when what you can afford and what you can stomach are on the same page, and it's the page you're living on, right? You are in a place where you can afford it and you can stomach it. You're being responsible and you're enjoying the heck out of it. And I have clients with multi-million-dollar portfolios way over their, rule of 100th percentage exposed, and I have clients with multi-million-dollar portfolios who don't want to lose a dime. So it's really individual. What can you afford and what can you stomach? Number 4, you plant a seed in the ground, it grows into a tree, and you live off its fruit. This one's a little bit different. This is where we find fixed index accounts. So fixed in that is protected, the principal is protected. Index, an index is a portion of the market. So if something is indexed or following an index, it's not directly invested in the market. It's basically copycatting one chunk of the market to determine its growth. Isn't that interesting? So these can be fixed index annuities, which just means fixed, can't lose, index, follows part of the market, annuity, managed by an insurance company. There's some universal life options that have the same type of behavior. I'm not saying either of those are recommendations for anyone. I'm just telling you a little bit about how it works. So the way that these work is you do have access to some market gains without being subject to market losses. How can that happen? Well, the cost, right? The cost of that protection is that you may have a participation rate, or there may be a cap as to how much that money can grow. So the behavior might be slightly limited, but the loss side always has a floor. Okay, that's guaranteed, and most of the time it's 0. Isn't that fun? Y'all feel a little bit better about how money can behave? All right, the M word. Why the heck does it matter what you have and where it is and what you spend? Not only does the order that we spend our dollars in matter when we're retired, it can matter every day without stressing about it, right? If it's going to add too much stress to your life, please ignore that little part of the talk. But all of us know that what we could buy for $1 in 2010, we couldn't buy anymore in 2020. In fact, we can make, in 2020, we've got 2 cents more than what a woman makes for every $1 that a man makes currently in America. I brought it back to the 82 cents we talked about earlier. It was just funny. It just happened to work out that way, that about 84 cents is the value of what $1 was. And so one of the reasons this might be something that you want to think about, and please don't be overwhelmed or feel like you have to memorize all of this, to be able to make good decisions. You can choose wisely based on where you are, what you have, and what you spend. But the reason that this could make a big difference, not only in retirement, but any time in life, is if you consider the difference in the value of those dollars. That means the dollars that you spend over here, or the ones you're spending today, it's very likely that they cost more than the dollars you'll be spending in the future. So think back to when I talked about logically a home, right? Whether you want to own it outright or have a mortgage. I'm just pro having a roof over your head, okay? So I think you can truly be responsible either way. I'm a little on the emotional side there, but neither here nor there, okay? What the logical side would tell you is that the dollars that you're giving the bank, why would you want to give them more dollars of the expensive dollars? when they're letting you pay them with the lower dollars, depending on what the interest rate is. So that's another thing that comes into consideration when we think about the dollar, what the dollar's worth and which one we should spend first. Isn't that kind of fun? Dollar. So there's a lot of factors, inflation, of course, deflation, depreciation, market corrections, interest earned or interest owed. All of those could make differences. Some accounts to access, like if you think back to this circle, you can write a check and it doesn't cost anything, right? You can use your debit card to get cash if you're at the right place without it costing you anything to do that. But if you get money from, let's say, your 401k, it's going to cost you 20%. If you're 59.5, if you just want to take it out and spend it. If you're under 59.5, it'll be an extra 10% cost on top of that for being such a young one. All right. So there are different costs or penalties or fees associated with spending different dollars. And now, look at those words. Some of those words are scary and intimidating. I don't want them to be intimidating, so I'm not going to fully textbook define all of them, but I'm just going to give you a quick little, this is what that is, so you don't have to be afraid of it, okay? And so that you can know, oh, I've heard that word, right? Sometimes it feels better just to have heard it. So a stock, you heard my explanation of that. You own a piece of the American dream that someone else is building. You're helping them build that dream. You have stock in the company. A bond would be a similar concept, but it would be in the form of a loan to that company, or you could have a government loan, a loan to the government, in which case they agree to pay you back. Right? So they will agree to pay you back at a certain rate at a certain time. Some people say those are safer, right? And they could be. It's just a different type of thing. So a stock is, ooh, I like that company, I'm gonna buy it. A bond is, I'm the company and I want you to let me have some money so that we can make this thing work. And if it works really well, you're gonna be so glad you did. And I'm gonna pay back everything and some. A mutual fund is tracking, again, the success of a mutual fund. So it's a combination of different stocks in the stock market grouped together as if it's one. So when you buy or sell a mutual fund, you're not just doing one at a time. Ooh, I think I like that. Ooh, I like that. You're not trying to cherry pick and say, oh, I have no idea where to begin. Someone might say, well, these mutual funds might do this in such amount of time, or they were built, they were put together for this purpose or that purpose. So it's just one way to do that. Index is, like we were talking about, the fixed index annuities that they're not even necessarily invested in. It's just referring to like copycatting the way that a specific part of the market is growing, like the S&P 500. That's an index that could be followed. So it may copycat or mirror that part of the market. IRA just means individual retirement pre-tax account, okay? So IRAs mean that the taxes have not been paid yet. A Roth IRA is the same thing. It's a retirement account, but you've already paid the taxes. So with a traditional IRA, when you pull money out of it, you got to pay the taxes. And you got to pay the taxes on what you make off of it first, right? And then what was originally in there, but the entire amount was taxed as income. For a Roth, no taxes coming out. Just going in, tax. Coming out, don't matter when you pull it. Well, it does matter when you put it in the rules of the Roth. Senior plan, but it's not taxed when you take it out. Okay, a tax bracket and an effective tax rate. These are words that some have asked me to explain before, so I'm just throwing them out there like popcorn or confetti. But the difference between a tax bracket and an effective tax rate is a tax bracket is divided up, right, by the IRS. And so when you, or if you're filing jointly, you and your spouse, or just When you come to a specific place in your income, the tax bracket where you are is defined. The effective tax rate, okay, is the average of what you pay in the taxes overall, because all dollars are taxed to one amount. Then the next tax bracket, when they add some additional percentage there, only the extra part, the part that's more than the part that's already been taxed at the lower rate, that's the only chunk that's being taxed more. So the effective tax rate is not the same thing, super fun. The effective tax rate is not the same thing as your bracket. 401k, 403b, TSP, I plug those all together. They're not exactly the same, but it's the same concept. These are employer contributory plans. That means there's something set up for you already. You see right over there, just like, what? What is this? So someone is making contributions on your behalf, an employer is, and a lot of times they match, check with your company to see what's available to you. The 403b is like the nonprofit side, same basic concept as the 401, and TSP is the thrift savings plan, but similar concept, they're still contributory. And then, of course, a SEP you can have as a self-employed individual. You don't have to miss out on not having a 401k because you're not working for a company. You can set up your own. And the limits for a SEP are higher than that of a 401. Isn't that fun of what you can contribute no matter your income? So was money fun? Do you feel like you know the M word a little bit better? Don't be overwhelmed. There's not going to be your test, just, real life. So to always have enough, don't panic. Just plan. There's a way to plan for the future. We may not be able to plan what's going to happen, but the more we know about what we have and where it is, and most importantly, what we spend, the better equipped we will be to always have enough. And so when it comes to knowing what you have, where it is, and what you spend, to me, the most important part is what you spend. Because spend can be broken up in three parts, right? It can be a have-to spend, like I've got my, your bills. This is what you have to spend to live. You have to buy your power. You have to buy groceries. You have to buy certain things. But then there's also a get to spend that we spend often, right? When we start making a list of the things that we spend, the get to would be like getting your hair done, which I need to do. Not been on the list in a while. Or doing your nails, or even eating out at a restaurant. That's not a have to. You have to eat, but you don't have to eat in a restaurant. So that would be considered a get to. A get to is where you can start trimming. If you see you're spending more than what you have, or spending more than what's coming in, the quickest way to solve this is to look at your statements and make a list of everything that you spend. And then break it up. The have to, the get to, the want to. All right. The want to is where I put things like a bucket list. Like, ooh, I would love to go there. Or, something that you want to do. Maybe if you have children, I want to send them to a private school, or I want to buy him this one toy. Like, it's not a have to, it's not a get to. I would like to, but if I don't, it's going to be okay. But for me, planning, I want to put it on my list because then I can start thinking for the future. I may not have the $300 that it's going to cost for it today, but if I'm planning for it, if it's on my list, then I can start slowly, getting there. So you've heard the little adage, if you plan to fail, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. Not sure who said it, but it's true to a degree. I also think you can be accidentally successful sometimes. Okay, like when I met my husband, I was making pretty good money, but I had credit cards, I had a car loan, and before we got married, he made me pay off every credit card I had. Because when you marry somebody, like your credit is their credit. it's like a combining of finances, and he was like, you are insane. How on earth do you make that kind of money and you don't have anything to show for it? And I thought I was making it because I had a family. You know, I arrived. I had a BlackBerry too, and I was so proud of it. But anyway, so I had to change how I looked at where I was and start making plans. So little by little, you know, you pay here, you pay there, and there's all different kinds of ways you can do it. Start with the highest interest or start with the lowest amount to get a snowball going. But doing nothing, you know, it's more likely that you'll fail than not fail. I'm doing a lot better planning than I was when I didn't plan at all. All right, so these steps are fuzzy for artistic love, and they represent the mountain of your life. The mountain basically has two sides. We're climbing up the mountain and we're climbing down the mountain. If you know a lot about climbing mountains or hiking, more accidents happen coming down than going up. I don't know why, but for some reason it does. In retirement and income planning, I do think there's a greater probability of a fall or a mishap, of missing a step when it comes to income planning. Just like if you've got an employer contribution plan, how hard is it to say, excuse me, HR, can you just get them to hold out whatever the max is, whatever they're gonna match, just hold out the most you can hold out by. It's a limit. I mean, you can say 2%, 3%, 5%. I know it feels like a lot. If you don't see it, it's gonna be the easiest way to save. How hard is that? That's easy. Someone else is doing it for you. I'm done. Now, what you spend, there's no HR person who can say, is this really a have to, or is that a get to? That's the hard part, right? So we've got different challenges coming up and coming down. And I just wanted y'all to see a picture of what that may look like and different considerations that come along with financial planning, that come along with how much do I need to save? People say, when do you think I can retire? How much should I save? Well, do you have a dart or some dice? Because we might as well just roll some dice and see what happens, because I don't know. I don't know anything about it. First, I don't know when you're going to die. Someone told me earlier, they were saying something about telling the future, and he said, my crystal ball is broken. I was like, that's funny. And I didn't use it, I just told you about him saying it. But maybe the question that you keep hearing me not answer is, how much do I need to have? But what do you have? Where is it? And what do you spend? If you know those three things, you can plan and appropriately designate dollars to different places and always have enough. So that is a different answer for everybody, and none of us know, right, until we pass. There are many things that go up here that we need help with, right? Like even college or trade school, or and you don't have to go to college to get a better job. You don't have to go to trade school. I'm not saying don't go to college and be, do you, but there are ways to learn trades and to get better without having to have that expense if you don't have it. At 18, I sure didn't have it. At 19, I sure didn't have it. And I had other things in my life that demanded dollars to be spent elsewhere. But did you know that in this day and age, you can take classes from Harvard for free? Did you know that? There are classes online, like there's a way to go to the school that you probably couldn't get into, not you, but me, but I probably couldn't get into to access. There are free resources everywhere, even at our local library, and experts at the library who know how to access these resources. You can always sow into yourself. You can always learn more even without spending. What I find is that a lot of times people will say, well, I'm not gonna make a lot of money. I didn't get to go to college. Well, you didn't get to go to college. Okay, well that sounds kind of like an excuse because you're not dead, right? you can make great income and you can learn new skills. And there are different ways of doing that than just coming up with enough money to spend to buy that education. In most of these, we need help from someone, right? But some of them are super easy, like the savings that we're talking about. When we get to the top of the mountain, it's retirement. Yay, you made it. And then we come down. So the planning to always have enough is different up than it is down. And not all of us go up or down at the same pace, right? And not all of us have the same life experience that have to order the same exact way. You can always have enough. And you have permission to ask for help. Sometimes, as a woman, I know in talking to other women for years, that sometimes we don't want to ask for help. I don't know if it's because we don't want to seem like we don't know what we're doing, or because it's cliche, maybe. I don't know. I don't know what it is, but I know that if I ask someone to help me, even if she's super busy and she's got a lot going on, I have at least one friend who's like this. It doesn't matter what she has going on, she'll always say yes. And she would never ask me to help her. Never. It just wouldn't happen. Can I help you with that? Oh, no, I'm good. I got it. Right? Sometimes we become so efficient at doing things, or being even in survival mode or whatever, where we just don't want to ask for help. And so you have permission to ask for help. Rachel's giving you permission. She says you can ask for help. 90% of women who work with financial professionals say that they would recommend it to their neighbor. Speaking of, don't let your neighbor cut your hair. What do I mean by that? Not all advice is good advice, right? Not all advice works for everyone. Just like we talked about logical and emotional, and there's a lot of things going on when it comes to finance, and a lot of different things to consider. My mom was a single mom with 4 kids. That's a different consideration than me now, 41. And you would think that I was way more stressed than she ever was. But anyway, when I say don't let your neighbor cut your hair, I mean, if your neighbor's edges look really good, that doesn't mean he knows how to cut your hair, right? So when it comes to professional matters, it's okay to ask a professional, like financial planning or income planning or taxes, right? There are some major decisions that we shouldn't just take anybody's advice for. We should consult a professional, and we have permission to do so. There's Rachel, all smiles. You did great. Number 1. Thank you for hanging in this whole time. You're still there. If you're not, the ones in class are, so. Okay, number 1, take a deep breath. You know where you begin. There are some super easy journal prompts in your handouts. I'm a big journaler, or at least a believer in journaling, helping process where we are and where we need to go. So you've got some super fun journal prompts that will help you get even farther. But hopefully it was helpful to establish the lens that you use to look at the M word that you can now say, money. And I bet you know a little bit more about money than you did before. And I get a yes. I'm seeing nodding in at least one hand. We did it. And lastly, you can plan and always have enough. Plan to do. If you know what you have, where it is, and what you spend, you will always have enough. Congratulations! That completes Women, Money, Power. And that was at least 60 minutes of college level, material that you just made it through. So thank you for being challenged. Thank you for coming outside the box with us.